All right. So what kind of jet we taking to Peru? Or is it a plane? Either one's fine. I just need first class, okay? Because I got long-ass legs.
Hey guys, Granditamias here, and I hope you all have been having a great start to your summer. I know I did, as I have finally completed my bachelor's degree in biology. Now I can hopefully figure out and put together into motion what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. As one of my presents for graduation, my grandmother took me on a trip to Peru, where I got to visit some pretty exciting locations, as well as learn about and experience a lot of Peruvian culture. And let me tell you, I had the time of my life. Getting to visit another country for the first time was already a big leap for me 6 months ago when I visited Mexico, but getting to visit another continent, especially in the southern hemisphere, well, I'm honored to be someone who can say that I have. Peru actually holds a special place on my mom's side of the family. After she returned to the States for college, the rest of our family moved to Peru, as my grandfather was in the oil business, and so they moved around a lot in South America. At various points, they also lived in Bolivia, Venezuela, Ecuador, and Colombia for 10 years, actually. Oh, and for the two people who may be wondering, no, me wanting to go on this trip had nothing to do with Transformers: Rise of the Beasts being set in Peru. My grandmother already planned this trip years before that movie came out. That said, I will make references to the film, but I could honestly make a whole separate video about what the movie gets right and wrong about Peru. In preparation for this trip, I bought some new hiking shoes and broke them in a few months before.
Yeah, I'm walking to Peru.
Much closer to the trip, though, I packed up all that I needed and recorded it the night before. So here's what I'll be packing for Peru. Here's my regular tennis shoes. I'll be wearing these like on and off throughout the trip, but I'll have my hiking shoes with me like during the flight. Yeah, here's the rest of my clothes. My little neck bag for keeping my wallet and passport and all that. Pajama clothes, just a extra bag and Ziploc as well. A little mask just in case, and popcorn, just in case I find a microwave at the hotel there. And my backpack, just an extra change of clothes, and Texas hat, because why not? Oh yeah, and I'll also have, I'll be reading this during downtime, because you guys know what I like doing recently. And a drawing spiral in case I get bored. Oh, and I also have over here my Nintendo 3DS charging. I haven't played this thing in a very long time. Yeah, but this is another thing I'm going to try to use to not keep me bored. Oh, and the game, or one of the games that I'll be playing is Alvin and the Chipmunks 2007 for the DS. And my AirPods there too are charging. But yeah, that, along with some extra like insect repellent and stuff in here. Yeah, that's all I have packed there. Oh yeah, and I have my toiletry bag elsewhere, but I'm gonna like pack that on the morning of. But yeah, that's all I got to take with me to Peru. Spoiler alert, I didn't even end up resorting to the DS or Dune because I was just too tired after every excursion, and I only drew this in the drawing spiral. You'll learn what this is later. So then came the morning of May the 22nd. After waking up at 3 in the morning when the roads were almost completely empty, my mom drove me and my grandmother to the airport. We got checked in, I got some coffee, and we waited until our flight gate opened. We did have to stop at 2 different airports before going to Lima, but not too much happened during that time, so I'll skip ahead to that flight. I also don't have footage of every takeoff and landing since I didn't always get a window seat, but I'll make the best of what I got. It was a nearly 6-hour journey from Miami to Lima, which was essentially just a straight shot south. And it was the first flight long enough where I was served food during it. I gotta say, airplane food isn't half bad. And I watched Trolls Band Together as my in-flight movie. I won't say much about it, since I may or may not be bringing it up again in a future video. But I will say that I liked it, and I saw it again on my way back to the States, too. After we landed in Lima that night, we were very tired. The ride to our hotel was pretty quick, but driving in Peru is very similar to how it was in Mexico. I'm almost certain that I could never learn to drive anywhere outside of America. The next morning, we got a better look at the city in daylight from our hotel room, and it has a very London vibe to it. But what's weird is that, despite all the fog, it rarely, and I do mean rarely, ever rains in Lima. It's a city of 13 million people in a desert that's also along a coast. Seems paradoxical, but that's the rain shadow effect for you. As a result, Lima is very often foggy and misty, but gets most of its water supply from the mountains. It just occurred to me, Real Life Lore should really do a video about Peru sometime. Anyway, the first big thing that we did that day was a gastronomy tour. We went to a few restaurants and markets, and I tried a lot of new and really tasty food.
The food is really good in Peru.
One thing that I had tried before in the States, but got to eat several more times in Peru, was ceviche. It's raw fish, like sushi, but it's neutralized in a lime juice-based concoction called leche de tigre, or milk of the tiger. Served alongside some slices of yam, corn, and a lettuce leaf. Delicious. I also tried this purple drink called a chicha morada, which, despite its fruity flavor, is made from purple corn. Yeah. Later on that day, we visited the Church of San Francisco. We weren't allowed to take pictures from the inside, but there wasn't too much there that I found interesting anyway, aside from the catacombs. Funny thing, we had to tour it twice because we arrived in Lima a day earlier than the rest of the group that my grandmother had scheduled us to travel with. So after doing that again, we went by the Capitol building. We also went to a restaurant where we learned how to make ceviche, and that was the appetizer because for lunch I had this Chinese rice with shrimp dish. And I think now's a good time to mention some pretty important trivia. Peru actually has a considerably large Asian population, the largest in Latin America, in fact. Most of them are Chinese or Japanese, owing to large waves of immigration during the mid-19th century and the 1980s, respectively. As such, Asian influence has become baked into Peruvian cuisine, pun intended, resulting in some pretty unique food. There's even a local word for Peruvian Chinese restaurants, chifas. The next day, we flew to Cusco, which is where we spent most of the remaining trip. We visited a llama and alpaca petting zoo, which also had a shop selling authentic wool clothing. I didn't get pictures or footage of that store, but the retailer is Soul Alpaca, and later on in the trip, I visited another one of their stores and bought this sweater. I bought some empanadas for a snack at a place with a garden and stone statues.
I smell empanadas?
And this is important. This thing that looks like a plus sign with extra corners is called a chicana. It was a ubiquitous symbol for the Incas in much the same way the yin-yang is for China or the ichthys is for Christians. To put it in a nutshell, the chicana in the Inca religion represents the three dimensions of existence: the underworld, the living world, and the astronomy world. This will be important for later points of this video. Later on that day, I also visited this place of which I can never pronounce the name of. Hiking to the top and viewing the scarred sides of the surrounding mountains and the farmlands of the valley below, all while the sunset was approaching, it's just a view that I could never get tired of. But that could not compare to what I saw the next day. We took a nearly 2-hour train ride to the town of Aguas Calientes, or Hot Waters, where the environment transitioned from temperate to subtropical. Along the way, we saw these pods hanging off the side of a mountain, which are actually a hotel, believe it or not. I'd be pretty nervous to stay in one, though. But Aguas Calientes also has another name, Machu Picchu Pueblo. Pueblo means town in Spanish, but the first two words give it away. Getting to visit one of the 7 wonders of the world was, without a doubt, the highlight of my trip. It's so amazing that people actually built this by hand before the invention of cranes, bulldozers, and other construction equipment. Especially when you consider that it is, well, obviously higher elevated, but it's also farther away from other Inca settlements. The large rocks even had to be transported from relatively far away, all without the assistance of the wheel, due to the extreme topography. At best using log rollers. But due to a combination of factors, including earthquakes causing buildings to sink and become deformed, and war with the Spanish, it never got to be completed. What I found most interesting was the reason why it was culturally significant to the Incas. It was essentially their version of an observatory. Remember how I mentioned that astronomy was important to their religion? Well, there's part of a Chicana here. And I find it funny that modern observatories are built far away from cities to avoid light pollution, and the Incas did the same thing with Machu Picchu, even though they never had to deal with that problem. The next day was slower. We slept in a little, checked out some shops. We saw some statues and rock carvings around the town, a lot of them depicting the ninth leader of the Inca Empire, Pachacutec. I saw this really cool bug, a Dobson fly about 4 inches long. Oh, and I saw this really cool lizard the day before, forgot to mention that. Oh, and I can't forget to show this. This is alpaca meat. It's a lot like beef, and this dish also came with some tiny squishy potatoes covered in cheese, which were really good. Oh, and I also learned during the gastronomy tour that there are 4,000 varieties of potatoes in Peru. The isolated nature of potato populations in the mountains has led to much genetic diversity among them. Earlier in the trip, I also tried guinea pig, but I'm not going to show that as the way they are cooked might be too disturbing for some viewers. So after a train ride back and a bus drive along a road that suffered a lot of rock slides, we made it to our next hotel back in Cusco, where we spent the next 2 days. I'm gonna kind of lump this all together. So we had some free time and roamed around the town square. I bought a gift for a friend, and I can't show it, but I did see a little kid dressed as Bumblebee. We visited the Inca sites of Tipon, where I saw this American kestrel, and Sacsayhuaman, which, yes, sounds like sexy woman. We also visited the Church of Santo Domingo, which is one of 4 churches in the town square of Cusco, all of them Catholic. That was supposed to be the end of the trip, and we went back to Lima that night. But we had one more day, so we did a little extra shopping. I didn't get any of these, I just saw these as I was walking through the street. But I found it really funny that amazing digital circus plushies are being sold in Peru. I guess it must be popular down there. But more importantly, we went on another excursion and visited Pachacamac. The Inca village, not this, though he is named after this place. And this excursion was my idea after I told my grandmother about the character and that I knew it was a site in Lima. She offered to add it to our trip plan while we were still waiting for our first flight in Texas. So if you saw my Knuckles review, you might be wondering why I pronounced Pachacamac the way I just did, instead of how the show does, as Pachacamac. Well, I asked the tour guide about this, and he said that technically both pronunciations are valid. In the native Quechua language, the pronunciation is, or at least is much closer to, Pachacamac, while in English it gets translated as Pachacamac. I've just always preferred the Quechua pronunciation, I just think it's cooler. Not sure if I should switch to the English version when talking about the character. Not that it matters because we're probably never going to see him again in the movies, and Sega hasn't done anything with him in 25 years. So hopefully we can put this pronunciation debate to rest, but let me know which one you prefer. Alright, enough sidetracks. Why was Pachacamac, the place, important to the Incas, and other cultures who would pass through here? Well, besides being the name of the place, it was also the name of an earthquake god, to whom they would make sacrifices, both human and animal. Llamas, guinea pigs, and even frogs were offered on this pyramid. So that was our day, and that night we started making our way back home. I only got 3 hours of sleep before we got to the airport in Miami, and that's where we hit a snag. It turns out that our flight to Dallas got moved up a few hours, so it left Miami before we even landed there, and we didn't find out until after the fact. My grandmother was frustrated, as was I, but we sorted everything out. We did have to wait over 12 hours in the airport before we could leave, and it was so boring, so I didn't even take that many pictures or videos besides what you're seeing. But here's a National Park Service ad with dated meme humor. And that was it. My entire trip to Peru and back. This has been, without question, the greatest trip of my life. I mean, Machu Picchu alone was enough to cement that. I feel like this has to be on everyone's bucket list. I know I said that Mexico would be a good place to live if I could ever find good job opportunities there, but so would Peru. It would have its hurdles, like the driving, but there's just something about this place. The people, the food, the nature, the ancient history. This video cannot possibly do it justice. The only way I'd go back just to visit would be if I was taking someone special to show all this to. It'll probably be a while before I go traveling again, but I have some ideas. I guess you could say I'm making my own bucket list. Anyway, if you've ever gone, want to go, or even live in Peru, let me know in the comments. I'll be working on my regular content, but it might take some time, so please be patient. As always, socials are linked below. With all that said, I hope you enjoyed, have a nice day, and thank you for your time.